Good morning, YouTube. If you've watched our channel long enough, you know that we've dealt with a few scammy dealerships, and unfortunately we're dealing with another one, and this is actually going to be a bit different. We are dealing with the buyer's side of the story, not the seller's side.
So are you recording all of the nefarious activities?
We've dealt with a few sellers. In fact, this is the buyer of the GT 500. Marcus had a consignment with this dealership, Alpha Motive, and then Carlos is the buyer. And in a weird situation, the two of them figured out who each other were. So we never really had that happen with CNC Motors as far as interviews with both sides of the fence. So we're going to actually interview Carlos and hear his side of the story. And it's kind of unusual to have this perspective. Every time the dealerships do one of these situations with a consignment, there are two victims. I've said that many times. The buyer and the seller both are victims. So let's hear from Carlos. All right, everyone, this is Carlos, and he is the person who bought the GT500 from Alpha Motive. It's kind of become a debacle, so I'm gonna let him tell his story from his perspective. Yeah, this is all very, it's not good.
Yeah, it's definitely a crazy story. First I want to apologize. By the way, I'm presenting myself. It's Sunday, so I just kind of came.
No worries, man. Hey, I'm sitting here drinking a beer. It is Sunday.
It's been a crazy last week, pretty much. Long story short, the way it started was I got a message from my girlfriend's mom because she's obsessed with that car. You know, she loves the Eleanor, and she's been wanting to get one herself. She's the one that came across it, and she sent it to me. She was like, hey, there's a really nice, GT500, check it out. And, I looked into it. Then I started doing a little bit of my due diligence, and I saw that it was up for sale on the DuPont registry. I saw that it was on James Edition. And I did I looked at everything that I could. I started reaching out, and everything was just matching, right?
Right.
So from my point of view, it all just started off well. I reached out, we started negotiating the price. We agreed on a price. I wired the money, and that next day I had that car, delivered from California to me. A couple of days passed by. Like I mentioned, my girlfriend's mom's obsessed with the car, so she was like, hey, can I drive it? I want to take it out for a spin. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. I had it dropped off at her house, and she was driving it, having a blast. She gets home, and then I believe the next day, her house gets raided. All these cops show up, and they kind of like hostile and aggressive. I'm not gonna lie. And I wasn't even there at the time, because it was at her house. It was like, hey, this car's been reported stolen. There's an issue with this and that. And where'd you get the car? They started questioning her and his girlfriend. And, eventually they reached out to me, and they were like, hey, the car was reported stolen. What's going on? I just show all the proof that I bought the car. I sent them everything, and they settled down. They realized that I had bought the car. It was a transaction. They're the ones that actually put me and Marcus in contact. That's how we first kind of knew about each other. So
right.
Just told him like, hey, give him my number so we can kind of speak and see what's going on.
I was say at that point you had no idea anything weird was happening.
No, it had already been like almost 20-30 days time. I thought everything was just fine, and
yeah,
I was waiting for my title. They said they would mail it out to me. Yeah, so then me and Marcus got in contact, and he started kind of just sharing his side of the story, which it's pretty much what from the other video. We were kind of trying to just figure out what was going on. And it turns out that he consigned the car to them. They had like that bond to have the car sold, and I guess they never paid him.
Jeez.
Yeah, so he never got paid, and he felt that he was maybe, I guess, like scammed. The best way to describe it, I guess he felt he had gotten scammed and stuff, and that's kind of when he was like, what, I'm gonna go after the car, and that's when he tried getting the car, and that's it. We were going back and forth, trying to figure out what to do. Alpha Motive was not being in any help in any way. They kept telling him that he was gonna get his money. They kept telling me I'll get my title, and then things started to just get really heated when it became evident that Marcus might not be getting his money. It's starting to get crazy,
Have you been in contact with Alpha Motive since all of that?
The last message I sent them, because there is like a civil lawsuit, and now it's becoming into this big deal.
Oh yeah.
I messaged them and I was like, hey, I think it's serious now. It's about to go down. Like I don't think you should be like kind of playing around now, or I think you should get your shit together practically. And The last message you sent me was, we got it under control, and I'm gonna pay Marcus. And that's the last message we got. And it was honestly like a week ago. Like it was just like recent.
He's still saying that he's gonna pay Marcus.
Yeah, and that's the last message I got. So this whole time, and this is where it starts to get crazy, right? So this whole time, obviously I have the car, he has the title.
Yep.
But the reality here is that I have what's known as I have the equitable title. So, the equitable title just means that there was a transaction, I paid for the car, and then he has the title, so the whole time the car has been in my possession, So I kept the car I have 2 homes, and I kept it in one house that I just felt it was, the best protected, because I saw some things that just kind of worried me that they might try and, take the car without permission, or like just kind of sketchy stuff.
Right.
I recently bought out this furniture business, and I was going to have a grand opening, and I really wanted the car there. I was going to tow it there, just kind of present the car and show it there. And I moved the car from that house to this house, the one I'm currently in. And within like a day or two, I was in my backyard, and I just see the car being towed out. And I just freak out. I tried chasing after them. I fell, I cut myself up. Like it was crazy. And I didn't know what was going on. I was like, they just took my car. Like, what is happening here? And the first thing I do is I call my lawyer, and then I call the cops. My lawyer starts trying to do whatever he can do. And yeah, it turned out that it was Marcus, that he had, taken the car. He hired this sketchy third party that agreed to like kind of work with him. And I had a tracker on the car, so I was able to, find where the car was. I called the cops. The cops showed up to where the car was. And then they took the car, and they were like, look, this is a huge civil lawsuit. I believe Marcus knew that the cops can't do anything about it, because he had already sent them out to my house the first time, my girlfriend's house that time, trying to possess the car, and they didn't take it. They were like, look, he's a bona fide purchaser. Like, he bought that car in good faith. There was a transaction made. You consigned the car. I think they even told him, like, Marcus, you can't even be saying the car was stolen. Like, you literally dropped off the car to the dealership, handed them the keys, and they had the rights to sell the car. They were your agent, to agency. And then it even says in the contract, like, it's our car, they have permission. Like, he signed them, the rights to sell the car. So I think this whole time he knew he couldn't get the cops involved. So he just probably called around and started trying to find a third party that can just repossess the car, and took actions into his own hands. Yeah, so then the cops showed up, they took the car. They were like, look, no one can take the car. We're going to take the car to the impound. And they took the car to the impound. My lawyer was getting ready to send the impound a letter. It was a cop's impound, a letter saying like, hey, no one can take this car. Don't let anyone take the car.
Right.
Like, there might be someone with the name Marcus coming in trying to take the car. As soon as they received the letter, they call us back, and they're like, unfortunately, we just released the car. And I guess Marcus had showed up, with the title in hand, and just was like, hey, my car's here. Here's my title. And then he took the car again. So the car was taken twice, one from my home, and then from the car's impound. And this was all within the same next day, right? Like the first day and the second day. It's been super hectic, us fighting, trying to possess the car. Right now, the car made it all the way back to California. Now they told me the same story. They were like, look, we can't interfere. The cops told me the same story, which is kind of funny. So whoever has the car, you're allowed to have it. They're not going to interfere. So the fact that he took it, they didn't want to interfere with it. And when I had it, they didn't want to interfere with me.
The cops don't want to. Because it's civil. The cops don't want to do anything.
Yeah. So then, obviously the judge got a hearing appeared, and I think there was a court order. They did reach out to Marcus. I think he appeared. I don't know exactly what happened, but I think he appeared through Zoom with the judge and my lawyer and stuff. And they told him he has a court order not to move the car. They were like, look, we're going to allow the car to stay with you for now.
Yep. There'll
be a hearing in 2 weeks. You're not allowed to move the car. Don't wash it. Don't touch it. Don't sell it. Don't pledge it. You can't do anything. You can only receive the car. Don't mess with anything. Don't take anything out.
Right.
Right now, there is a huge, civil lawsuit.
Have you filed anything against the Alpha Motive?
Yeah, so there is a lot of lawsuits going out right now. Me and my lawyer have just been hammering on everyone. We obviously filed a lawsuit against Alpha Motive and Marcus. And now we ended up fighting a lawsuit against the third party, the tow company that essentially took the car. We're under the impression that, it's considered theft, what he did. We believe it's my car. And, the car was bought, I'm a bona fide purchaser. It was bought in good faith. At the end of the day, I think when all this settles and that, it's decided that, yes, it's my car, I think, there's potential for crime there and theft. So we are, we were suing the towing company as well. And I think there's even going to be one against the impound that had let the car out to Marcus. And here's the other crazy story. I guess this whole time, Marcus has had a PI on me for a couple months, I guess. So I guess that's what the cops told me, that he had a private investigator just kind of taking down all my schedule, when I leave, when I don't, where the car is, who I talk to. And I guess that's how he found out the car had been moved. They called Marcus up and they were like, now's your chance. So now we're even going to go after the private investigator. So there is just a mess, all this documents, lawsuits, and it's hectic. And we both have our own side of the story. Obviously he shared his side of the story.
Yeah.
And I felt it was only fair for me to come out and be able to share my side of the story, because there's two sides to it. I definitely feel bad for Marcus. I sympathize for him. I understand what he's going through, and it's tough for both of us. It's very hard for both of us. It's not just a one-sided thing. It's hurting all of us. And here we have a dealership that just took the money and left. And I understand where Marcus is coming from. I understand what he's trying to put out there. That his car was stolen, he was scammed. He was lied to, it was fraudulent. But the reality of the story is that I bought the car legally up to the point that the car was purchased. They had permission to do all of that. I believe that Marcus had the responsibility to choose the correct agency or the correct dealership to consign the car with. I think he should have done his research on who he was messing with, asking them hey, do you guys have a bond? How much is the bond for all, in case anything goes south? Have you had any successful consignments? Let me look at all of this research and see if you guys are the right partners. And I think he's even known them. I think they said that they went to a car meet together at a point, that they've known each other for a while. So, the sad part here is he tries to compare this a lot to the CNC group. What are they called? I forgot their name. Is that what they're called?
CNC Motors.
He tries to compare the scenario a lot to that. But we've kind of looked at both things, and there's just a vast difference of the way things was played out. Obviously they did defraud, I believe, hundreds of people, right?
Yeah.
And they actually did commit lots of crimes. They gave out faulty checks. They actually broke contracts before the car was sold, and their contract was very good. It was very different. For the person selling the car, giving them the consignment, it protected them pretty well. It did say certain things about when you can sell a car, for how much, and the difference here is Marcus's contract was honestly pretty bad. It was a half a page contract. It said it was our car. There was no value of what the car could be sold for. There was nothing like that. There was a fair market value of the car, but it didn't say what it could and can't be sold for. That's something else he's trying to argue, that it was sold for less than he would have approved, and but it doesn't say anything of that. I think he was responsible enough to choose the right people. I did my own research and everything checked on my end. I looked and I saw it was on the James Edison. I saw it was on DuPont. Everything was matching out. They showed me the title. I sent out a mechanic to go look at the car, and I believe they even test drove it. As a buyer, I did all the research I can do to make sure it was a legit dealership and a legit consignment.
Right.
From my understanding, they were even in contact, talking about hey, I'm talking to the buyer. Marcus knew there was a deal going on. He was hey, I'm in contact with the buyer. I have an offer on the table. We're negotiating. So he knew the car was going to get sold, and they had the rights to sell. The problem here is everything that happened after that. So that's kind of the way I see it. Up to the point that I bought it, they had the rights to sell it. They were married to the car with their agents. After the car was sold, they didn't want to pay him. Then they started lying to him. They started, giving him all this bullshit story. And,
right.
Whatever happened afterwards, this is where it's now an issue between you and the dealership. Not I have nothing to do with it. And he's obviously been withholding the title. So then that's where he's getting into issues himself, because now he doesn't want to release the title. So we all believe, I spoke to my lawyer, I spoke to California lawyers, I spoke to a lot of people, and they're they all kind of agree, look, we strongly believe it's between him and the dealership. But he obviously, whether he got buyer's remorse, whether he regrets it, whether he's in denial, it's obviously trying to fight for the car, right? But it's tough, it's tough for both. At the end of the day, it hurts both of us. It's a mess. There's so many parties involved. and issues. And
It's super weird because, like, as a third party, just hearing both of your guys' story, I completely sympathize with both of you. It sucks. Like, if I was buying a car and I buy the car and I pay for it and then I don't get the title, I'm going to be pissed. At the same time, if I'm selling a car on consignment and the car gets sold and then I don't get the money, I'm going to be pissed as well. As a third party looking at it, in my opinion, both people should do everything they can to get whatever they can, right? But the shitty part is that puts you guys in this weird situation where, because the money's gone, you have to kind of almost go at each other. The shittiest thing of it is the dealership is the one that messed up. I have a dealership. When we do consignments, someone buys the car, we get the money immediately goes to the seller. It flows right through us. Like, we have it for maybe an hour. You know, we don't want to hold that money. We want it to go because we want the transaction to go as smoothly and as quickly as possible. Now, what's crazy is the law allows dealers to hold that money for long periods of time. And it's like,
yeah, I think I saw they had the rights to hold it for like 30, 40 days.
Yeah,
before
it's
they give it
insane.
back to them.
Which the logic behind that is what happens when there's a lien. And so, yeah, we've had that where we've had a car that we're consigning and it has a lien. And so we do have to pay off the lien and whatever. I don't know what happened with the dealership and why. I don't know if they're doing like a robbing Peter to pay Paul situation is kind of maybe what it sounds like. Or, you know, maybe they got behind on bills and so they took the money you gave them and used that to pay a different car off or whatever. This just happens to be where the music stopped.
Yeah, I did speak with them and, he called me, his name is Byron and Gene. I think Gene was the one he spoke with. And, he told me, that he did owe a couple people some money. Like, so it wasn't just Marcus. It was like 3 or 4 cars in total.
Yeah.
And again, he could be lying and I'm not choosing his side. I'm not choosing the other side. I could argue both sides well. Like,
right.
Them being bad and them being good. But just from what he said, he was like, look, we're just a couple guys. We wanted to start a dealership and we got in over our heads. We sucked at financing. And I guess they got, what he said was they got too excited trying to have the place look amazing. So they had like an epoxy floor and the lighting and like walls and like, so they just took out on so much debt and then that debt was catching up to them. And I guess what you were talking about, the whole 30, 40 days, I assume they just wanted to pay off their debt and just kind of try and make profits along the way enough to be able to pay Marcus and the other guys, and then they just couldn't take it on it anymore, and it just all blew up on their face.
Right. Their bond is probably the state minimum, which probably is only like
yeah,
50.
it's a very
it's like 50 grand or something. CNC Motors had the same bond because that's all that's required. It's insane. I know, like, but no dealership on earth has a big bond because they're not required to. We talked to him on the selling side about his insurance. Have you talked to your insurance?
I couldn't do much because I didn't have the title yet. And also at the time, I also was, I had also purchased, other cars and like I was just kind of doing them under. But no, yeah, I really couldn't do much on that end. A lot of them just kind of wanted to be registered. They wanted, the title. I was still waiting for the title to arrive. So I was just kind of stuck. And waiting for me to put everything and then to get insurance and do all that stuff.
On the selling side, when you consign a car, your insurance won't consider it stolen, so they won't pay you out. There's a weird thing about where CNC Motors eventually got criminal charges, and so then at that point, I believe the DMV may have classified a bunch of the cars as actually stolen. By that point in time, I think a lot of the transactions had been settled where the buyers ended up with cars or whatever. But I don't know if the sellers could go back to their insurance and say, okay, this transaction is now considered criminal, pay out on my insurance policy. It's stupid. Like the fact that the insurance companies aren't on the hook, the dealerships aren't on the hook. I mean, it's bizarre. It's really bizarre, and it makes no sense.
Yeah, there's definitely some kind of weird, something's missing there, that needs to be able to like prevent all this from happening. And then here we are stuck. No one's with the car. The dealership just took the money, and however long it takes, a year, 2 years for this to settle.
Yeah.
I don't know how long it's gonna take.
And in the middle, the lawyers make all the money.
Yeah, I don't want to end up looking like. Let's just say it all settles, and I do end up with the car. Well, now I'm almost like worried to drive the car around because I'm like, well, what if I'm driving the car around and people are like, oh, like I end up looking like the bad guy, like, wow,
right.
He ended up keeping the car, poor Marcus, like, and now I end up looking like the bad guy who kept the car, and so I'm like, dude, am I even gonna be able to drive the car around? Because I already started seeing some posts on Facebook like about everything going on, So now I'm like, well, even if I end up with the car, I'm gonna feel so uncomfortable driving the car.
I can see that. It's, oh man. It's just such a cluster. God, I don't know what's the right. There is no good solution, right? Like there is no. If you end up with the car, he's out the money. If he ends up with the car, then you're out the money. Even if the dealership, even if he like gets put on criminal charges and goes to jail, that doesn't mean either of you now have the money or the car.
Yeah, they're just gonna go to prison or get sent to jail, and there's still you can't sue anyone. You can sue them all you want, but if they don't have the money.
Right. It doesn't do you any good.
Nothing's gonna happen.
The problem is if they were renting this space and they used the money to improve it, then the landlord's gonna get the rental property, and they're. So it's not like
have a nice place now.
right. It's not like they can like go repossess assets. It's not like they can go take off the floors or something. I would ask you like, what could you have done differently to avoid this? But I don't even know if that's possible.
Yeah, me and my lawyer was kind of going over scenarios. We're like, what could I have? Because I like to learn from my experience.
Right.
Obviously, like, it's common for people to do consignment deals. It's actually a good thing sometimes, especially if you're super busy.
A huge chunk of the exotic car world is consignment.
Yeah, so when they told me, I wasn't like, it wasn't a red flag. I wasn't like, oh, I don't trust it. Like, no, it's very common. I've bought it before. I've done it myself, and like they've all worked out, and it's common. It's a thing people do. But yeah, I was like, what could I have done differently to like maybe prevent it? But I was very limited. I'm on the buyer's side. I was just very limited because like you got to see it from my point of view. I just came in. Everyone was complying with me. There was nothing sketchy going on. They showed me the title. I sent a mechanic. I looked online. There was no issues or nothing. And like, I can't really be asking them for too much. I'm just the buyer.
If I was in your shoes, I would be fighting for the car. If I was in Marcus's shoes, I'd be fighting for the car or the money.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's horrible. It's absolutely horrible.
How it turns out, and maybe I'll learn something from it at the very end of it. That like, along the way, I'm sure maybe I'll learn something that I'm like, I love to educate people out there, and be able to share like, things to avoid on both ends. So, like, you're going to be a buyer or a seller. Like, hey, I've been through this. These are things that I've learned, and things to kind of keep an eye out for. And I guess we'll see how it goes. And I really do like the car. I mean, I love it. It was one of the cars that I bought, and I was like, man, I never want to get rid of this car. I love it. Never want to sell it. I want to keep it forever. Even hand it down to my kids if I have some in the future. And
well, hey, thanks for taking some time on your Sunday to talk to us. Again, this is Carlos. He is the other side of the fence on this story, and it's I wish I had anything positive to say, but I don't. There's just nothing good to say about it. I guess maybe we just need to drink a couple more beers. Thanks, man. Thank you for coming.
No, yeah, I appreciate it. I'll keep you updated if anything changes as we go. And
yeah.
Good. Thank you for having me on the channel. Again, huge fan. So definitely keep looking out for the rest of your videos and everything.
You bet. Well, YouTube, there you have it. That's Carlos's side of this situation. As I said, there's always two victims in every one of these consignment failures or scams, or I don't know if you call it scam or fraud or what, but it's just so messed up, and it's really sad, and my heart goes out to both of them, Carlos and Marcos. I feel really terrible for them, and I was telling Carlos after I shut off the recording, I wish like there's no good solution. There's no easy solution. It's all ugly and it's all bad. And unfortunately, I don't know at this point what's like the right solution to protect yourself either side if you're a buyer or a seller of a consignment car. People say, oh, well, you just gotta have a trusting dealership, but CNC Motors was highly trusted. So I don't think that shouldn't be the bar. There should be something else. Like, and in fact that they don't regulate this or somehow do something different. And I know I've talked about how we do consignments in our dealership now. And so people are like, well, how are you doing them differently? And how do I know I'm safe? And blah, blah. Our contract's a little bit different. It's pretty lightweight. It basically says that we're going to try and sell your car at this price. So anything other than that price, we have to have a verbal confirmation or written confirmation from you to do that. The other thing is when we do the transactions, we actually make sure that we buy the car from the seller and then sell it to the buyer so that it actually flows directly into our dealership. That doesn't make it perfect, and it doesn't mean it's 100% foolproof, but it does add an extra layer that hopefully makes people feel more comfortable. Theoretically, it would prevent us from fudging stuff. So it's almost like a check against ourselves. Yeah, hopefully I don't have any more of these videos to show you guys anytime soon, because I really don't like doing them. But stay safe out there, and we'll see you in another video doing car stuff.